Cursories, yes. Yes, it was a good reading.
Well, that was a delayed reaction.
Sorry, just very bad
It's
headache.
okay, I'm teasing.
I'm not feeling good. My head.
Who's Hilma? Hi, Judy. Hi, Judy Reutman.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, Sarah, Sarai.
Good to see you, sort of.
Oh, there. Now you can see.
Oh, there you are. Oh, yay.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so much fun.
Yes,
Ooh.
it is.
Oh, my goodness. You're all the way in Kansas.
I am.
You are far, far away.
Far, far away.
Thank you so much for showing up.
Oh, man, I wouldn't miss it.
Well.
Hey, Roxy.
And now Roxanne Hoffman, terrific. Adriana Scopino. I ran into her on 3rd Avenue the other day.
Hello.
Hi, Adriana.
Hi.
Hi, Adriana. It's been 8.
Hi. Hello.
It's been a long time, yeah. It's always good to see her, though.
Thank you.
Oh.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to episode 28 of the P.W.P sessions. That's the Poets with Purpose sessions. I'm your host, Noelle Figueroa. Thank you all so much for joining in tonight on this episode. This is episode number 28, and I'm excited to interview a new poet. First time connecting with her online is poet and author Sarai. I hope I pronounced that correctly. We're going to be looking forward to an awesome conversation. But before we dive into the conversation, I'm just going to go over a few preliminaries and share her bio with you all. Can everyone see the screen okay? Well, first off, I am excited because we are in Poetry Month, my most favorite time of the year. Yes, it's an exciting time for poets and lovers of poetry. And I'm honored to have the opportunity to have this interview during Poetry Month. I had quite a few things taking place this month, and this was just part of my event itinerary. So I'm very happy to have this event to share with you all tonight. Now, for those not familiar with this podcast, the P.W.P Sessions is a podcast where I have interviews with new or established authors of poetry and feature a performance of their work along with an audience Q&A session. I am your host, Noelle Figueroa, the poet, aka the Anointed Pen. I'm a poet, author, blogger, workshop facilitator, and event host, and I'm the creator of the P.W.P Sessions. Now, tonight's guest is Sarai. Sarai is an author of That Strapless Bra in Heaven, Kelsey Books, Geographies of Soul and Taffeta, Indolent Books, and The Future is Happy by Blaze Vox. Her poems are in New York Quarterly, the Southampton Review, Barrow Street, Big City Lit, and other journals. She was a gopher in a casting office on the lot at Paramount, taught high school English in LA and college in Seattle and NYC. Sarah's read her poems in New York, DC, Philly, Seattle, as well as LA. A native New Yorker, she wrote a few poems when she was 20, but had no idea that meant she was a poet. She resumed writing in her 40s, and she also holds an MFA in fiction from Sarah Lawrence College and now works as an independent editor. Sarah sees poetry as a personal platform and as a prayer. Now, without further ado, I introduce to you all Sarah. Good evening, Sarah. How you doing? Glad to have
I'm
you on the
fine.
show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, really, or allowing me to invite myself. Oops, I'm
Awesome,
already
awesome.
nervous. I dropped my glasses.
That's okay. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Sarai.
Sarai? Okay, awesome, awesome. Welcome to the show.
I have a request, and my request is that you spotlight yourself and Sarah.
Let's see.
No,
I know
we
how
don't
to.
need, let people choose their, oh, well,
Well, it does it automatically. I usually spotlight the person individually. I'm not sure how to do it with two people at the same time. Are you aware how to do that?
You can do it.
Okay,
You
let's
can do
see.
it. Or you can just spotlight Sarah. And then if we want to go to gallery view, we can. Sarah can go to gallery view, you can go to
you can spotlight the speaker. So who's ever talking is always the main.
Yeah, it usually does that automatically. It does that automatically.
Go up into, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm going to start off. I want to start off with a question that I ask all my guests: is who is Sarah Sarai? How would you describe yourself or define yourself?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm a compilation of molecules and emotions. I was set down on the planet to an interesting household. I was, oh, who cares? I was born a block from the from the Long Island Sound. I was born at home, and I'm an interesting person. I have interesting parents. I have interesting sisters. There's a lot of intelligence and emotion in my life, in my being. And I'm an inquisitive person, and I just have a strong sense of, I like to think I have a strong sense of justice, which does not make me a frontline person. I'm not pretending even to be that, but I'm politically minded.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Now your bio says that you started writing in your 20s. Can you describe like how you specifically how you got started with poetry at that time?
Well, at that time, I think I just heard a few poets read. In LA, I grew up in California. We moved there when I was 8. And I heard a few poets read, Robert Creeley and I don't know who else. And I just thought, and I guess it must have, sparked something in me, and I wrote them. They're here somewhere in my files, and I typed them very well because my mother made me take typing in high school or junior high. And then I had no idea that that meant anything. I could have just as easily written a note to my sister in San Francisco or something. And I wrote the 3 or 4 poems, I put them away, and it was at least 20 years later, maybe a little more, that I started writing poetry, as a real deal thing, or to the extent, yeah.
Right. But what were those poems like? Like, what were those when you first started writing? Like, what subjects were you covering? Like, what were you talking about at that time?
Well, the first batch, I was talking about hair. I was comparing hair between Jane Fonda, who was such an activist, and Emma Goldman, who was an old school activist. And really, I was just being such a woman. I was comparing my body to Emma Goldman's body because we're solid. And, Jane Fonda is Jane Fonda. And so it was just sort of more observational. I wrote one poem I remember about, I can't think of his name right now, a poet I saw across the way who just struck me as being so kind of light, like a aloof mensch, like a light person, just not quite on the ground. And that was it, and then there's like one other that I don't know. And then later, my very first poem that I wrote in Seattle, where I was really surrounded by, a lot of poets, and I lived around the corner from a poetry only bookstore. So they kind of nurtured me, those people. But I was so angry. That's another part I remember. But I remember I was in the bathtub, and I started thinking about my oldest sister, and we're very much alike and very different. And I just jumped out of the bathtub and started writing this poem about her. it didn't last. It didn't hold up, but that was it. I just was like fueled by something. I think there's just so much emotion in me. So it was certainly wasn't about justice or anything. It was just about complicated sister and complicated relationships of people. And that was that.
So would you say your reason for wanting to write was to have an outlet for yourself to express these different emotions and points of view?
I didn't want to write. It just came out of me. And I am a way lazy person. So if I didn't have to write poetry, if it didn't come out of me, it wouldn't be written. I can tell you that. I'm not one of these, doing this, doing that, getting her, whatever, teaching. I just barely write poetry. I do write some fiction, but I have to drag that out of me. So it's not like I want to write poetry. It sounds corny, but I can't not.
It's just, do you feel that it's something that just comes naturally?
Yeah. It's I think it's all the emotion. I think all the emotion had to come out. All my emotion. I can't think emotion reflected in tranquility, something like that. Yeah. This may not mean much, but I'm a triple Aquarian. So there's it's a big deal.
I hear you. The books that you described, well, can you talk about that strapless bra in heaven? Because that's a very unique title for a book. Like, how did that project come about?
Well, I got the title after, all the poems were assembled. And I'm looking for the book right now. And it's from the very first poem, which some of you in New York have heard me read. But it's partly political, and it's partly about yearning for something, like many of us would like to have some perfect, beautiful body with a perfect, beautiful strapless bra. And, any kind of perfection is in heaven. And there's a fair amount of religion from my mother in my background. So, that she wouldn't mind this. In some ways she was hip, in other ways she was not. Okay, so can I read this?
Sure.
Oh, okay. Wish me luck. I replaced phone to cradle, knowing it was just something to say, that luck's more than preparation, meeting opportunity, wooing a congressman, saving up for a sex change. It's not hard fact in collaboration with ambiguity, not briefs longing for that strapless bra up in heaven. It's a result. What Jesse Pinkman told Hank Schrader, Mr. White's so damn lucky, which may not bear out when the machine guns fired its last, or may, because fulfillment is in the eye of the storm. Could be luck's the River Jordan of fiction, a passage, a part of the daily miracle, a glad bag of coal Superman will squeeze into diamonds. I saw him do it.
Wow.
I did see him do it in the early, maybe you saw that too. Superman squeezed the diamond.
Right. Wow, that's an awesome poem. But is this book, like, what was your first book? Was this project your first book, or was it another one?
No, my first one was The Future is Happy, which I heard someone repeating as a not a motto, but just as an affirmation. The future is happy. So I picked that up, and they're all sort of similar in terms of, I think I've become more concrete because I was raised to believe I don't really have a body. My mother was a Christian Scientist, and so there are a lot of things that just weren't concrete. And if I had a rash, oh, don't be silly. I didn't really have stuff like that. I mean, it's really easy. So, and I'm also just very interested. I'm interested in things that don't. Anyone want to shout it up? No, I don't know what I'm interested in, but I have a slightly different. I said the word before, Luftmensch, which is Yiddish, which is an air person, and I think that's certainly true of my poems. I think sometimes, I think it's true of everyone. we're kind of hopping from here to there. So I think that's it. But I really am interested in just describing what I see,
Right.
and what I feel,
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's part of the agenda of most poets, to want to describe, in your individual emotions and feelings pertaining to different subjects. Now, most people would just write, maybe just write on the side, for leisure or what have you. Like, what was your motivation or desire to want to take your poetry and put it into book form?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think there's a certain element. I really picked up writing. Okay, I came back here from Seattle, where I had lived for 10 years and where I had begun writing. And I dropped poetry. And then somehow or other, I sort of got back into it, or it got back into me. And I went to a venue, Jackie's venue, Pink Pony, which was a reading series at the old Cornelia Street Cafe. And I just suddenly start putting myself around poets more and more again. And that's just what poets do. Poets try and, I've done self-publishing. I've published 3 chapbooks, and that's what I want to do next again. That was actually my favorite publishing experience, just publishing myself and walking
Yeah,
the
can
book
you?
around.
Yeah, that's a quite an experience, because I self-published my first book of poetry. Like what was that feeling for you, like, to be able to put something together on your own from like start to finish? Like, how was that process for you?
It was so much fun. They were, it would take me forever to find them, but they were smaller, they were really like chapbooks. And so I could design the cover, and I found, like an old out of date print that I could use. And so I was just very free, since I had no interest in selling it or anything. I just very free in what I chose to put in there. And I chose some of my more, I don't want to say silly, my more airy, my more interesting poems. Like one is named The Risen Barbie, because
Mhm.
I have a poem there about, it mentions Barbie, it meant a lot of musicians. But so yeah, I mean, that poem ended up in a book. Or oh, is Roxanne saying something? Okay.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that helps, but it was just in both, it was really hard to initially come up with the whole thing, to tell you the truth. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, I took a piece of paper and folded it. It was
Right.
really hard. And I got a lot of help from Kinko's around the corner. So whatever I
Right.
was doing, I was earning enough to, pay for the whole thing myself. But it was fun. And it was fun to just have something I did. And, I might charge $1 for it, depending. But
Right.
that's, yeah, to earn back the whole thing. But that's what I'd like to do next.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. There's definitely a great joy and satisfaction of knowing that you put together a project on your own. And I know that for a fact, based on the experience that I've had with my own first project. But would you say that you have a preference? Do you have a preference between self-publishing and the traditional publishing route, or do you feel there's no like no preference for you?
Um, I'm feeling a little broken these days. So my books don't sell really well. I don't have a big audience. I'm amazed that 8 people showed up, and one of them is me. But I'm amazed I showed up for myself. But so uh I don't want to have to worry about selling it. I just want to freely give it to people. And so right now I would like none of the sense of competition or what. I mean, I know one poet who has some students buy, this is a poet on the West Coast, buy their book by way of, compensation. So you never know what all people are doing in terms of getting their work out there. And this is New York, so it's like the Hollywood of poetry in terms of competition and people create.
Right.
Why should there be anyway?
Right. No, but you brought up a very valid point. I mean, it is a fact that in certain circles that there's, unnecessary competition and friction, or, however you would choose to define it, that can take away from the whole purpose of being an author and a poet. But I would say the positive side to that is, the positive side to that is, that there are environments where, us authors and poets can come together and appreciate the art of poetry and being a poet, for what it's meant to be. And that's why I'm grateful to create a platform such as this, where I can connect with writers such as yourself to give a platform where you can be seen and heard. One of my goals was to create platforms for independent authors, to have an opportunity to be in the spotlight and share from their heart. And that's another valid point to poetry in itself, because when you choose to be a self-published author, not only do you have the freedom and the satisfaction of being in control of your projects and what you write and how you write and who you present your work to, but you can go at your own pace. You're not obligated to be in competition. You're not obligated to put on a show for anyone. You're not obligated to live up to anyone else's idea of how you want to present yourself and your work. So there's a sense of liberation in that you can go at your own pace. If you want to draw a crowd, you can make attempts to draw a crowd. But if you want to be low key, and there's nothing wrong with that either. It's all about how you choose to present yourself and what avenues you choose to go through in order to be seen and heard. So there's a definite freedom, a sense of freedom and liberation in how you choose to present yourself and carry yourself. So there's no boundaries. It's just like poetry itself. Poetry doesn't necessarily have a form or fashion. It's basically your interpretation of how you present your feelings and your emotions, at any given moment on any given subject. There's no restrictions.
And so many poets are changing the forms, creating a different kind of sonnet, and it's
Right.
fine, it's great. And what I thought of, I can't come up with the name, but there are those little movies. There's like some little perfect movie that you saw, at a theater 20 years ago. And it doesn't have a big audience or a lot of fame, but I'm so glad it exists. Whatever, I used to see them more, but there are all sorts of little perfect things scattered around, and they're blessings, they're delights. So it doesn't matter if you contribute to the big body or the joy of discovery. I know a poet,
Right.
or he's no longer with us, Bill Knott, and he taught at the Iowa, the whole thing there, but he would self-publish. He would just mimeograph it, and he would send books everywhere. He just didn't want to bother with the whole thing all the time. He did sometimes.
Right.
But yeah. So
Yeah, and that in fact leads me to my next question. Who inspires you? Like, what poets you feel inspire you and motivate you to want to write?
well, there's this one of the poets I read tons of before I was a poet was a poet whose name I can no longer remember, so forget that. European, oh, Judy, you should know this. Oh, well, so anyway, so I guess I can't mention him. Lived in Europe, he got sick, he had an affair with a artist model, and Rilke. Okay, Rainer Rilke. And so, and what I like about him and the poets who I really like is that there's a sense of spirituality. There's just a sense of some kind of connection. I'm terrible with names because I also can't think of, there was a poet who was some partly Asian, he was in a car wreck, and he also, Lee Young something. Okay, that's not good. So I had some books here because I knew you'd ask that. So I love Claudia Rankin because she just pulls it together so beautifully, and she does something I could never do, which is, be really political. That is her. And Ernesto Cardenal. And I would like to say, I once told someone, I was reading Ernesto Cardenal and it's Golden UFOs, and they said, no, he didn't write a book named Golden UFOs. Well, my dear, yeah. So I like him because it's so interesting. He's bringing cultures of wherever he's from, Chile, or I'm sorry, I'm sounding so crass, but and bringing it together in the old gods and the new gods, and then the false gods, that are like ruining the globe. So I like him. I like yeah, Borges.
Mhm.
Okay, anyway. Emily, who doesn't like Emily? What's not to like?
Right. Is there any poet in particular that you would consider to be like your dream collaboration? Like who would you feel who would most inspire you to want to work with them or
Oh my
collaborate with?
goodness.
Does anyone in
Oh,
particular stand out?
I'm looking off to the side to see if well there's well I like really well my sister who made me start writing poetry because I jumped out of the bathtub. She was really kind of in a lot of ways a mentor to me. So anyway, so she introduced me to this poet named Stevie Smith, who was a British poet, and she included all these little, I don't know if you can see it or not, hand drawn. Yeah, and she's also very funny and smart than I am, and clever, and I would love to collaborate with her, except that she would probably be, well, I would love to collaborate with her. I mean, she's dead, but you mean like a poet now?
Yeah, it don't matter. It could be a person living or deceased. It's just a matter of if you could collaborate with them, who would it be?
I hadn't thought about it, but I think I'm so intimidated just even thinking about like Borges or, um, oh, the poet who keeps changing his name, Pessoa. I love him. But they're all so smart. And so what would they want to, maybe they have a sense of fun. Or maybe they'd like a drink. We could have a drink and then write poetry. You
Right.
can do anything if you've had a drink.
Right. Are there any subjects in particular that you prefer to write about, or do you feel like you just write what comes to mind or comes to your heart?
I tried to write political poems. I tried to write about, my one of my sisters, her husband was Black, so my niece and nephew and great niece, they're all. So I tried to write about that experience just off and on forever. And I had like maybe 3 poems. I mean, like I had a whole series of poems just about when I was 12 years old is when they got married, and me just thinking about the experience of my parents reacting, no reaction. I mean, there was nothing bad, but because I really love thinking about experience, but that's all I had was about 3 poems about experience and the house we lived in. And so I'm just not the person to write. I just can't. I'm just beginning to be able to be more blunt and plain in what I mean. There's a lot here and I don't mean brains. That's one thing. I just mean,
Right.
yeah. Okay.
All right, awesome. And that kind of leads me to my next question. Like you've heard the word representation, thrown around in different circles. Like how important do you feel it is for you to represent yourself in your totality, through your writing, whether you're talking about race, religion, gender, ethnicity, upbringing, like all of those factors combined, like how would you say it's important to you? How important is it to you to make sure that you're representing yourself in your totality through your writing?
I was just laughing because I was thinking, well, there's not enough white women in the publishing world. No, okay, so I don't have to represent that. You didn't even laugh. I just have to represent my truth. I have to represent my experience. I mean, I don't think a queer poet has to write about being queer. I don't think that they're beholden to do that.
Mhm.
And I don't think Asian poet has to write about that experience. It seeps if it doesn't in some way, if it doesn't seep into their work, then I would sort of question how connected they are to their roots. But I know there's a poet, a lot of us know, Ji Leong Ko. He he's from Singapore, but he's lived here forever, and he's part of the scene, and he's really good. And you know, again, it sort of seeps into his work, but that's not what he writes about. He's more interested in this case in queer representation, and that's fine. But I don't think that you have to do that. I don't think you have to do anything. I think there are always going to be these little boxes and debates about what, I mean, from what I've seen, racially, gender, queer, what you can and can't do. And I think that's not good. That you can't write according to code. I mean, maybe if the government says you can't use a word, so you don't use the word, but then you write it in a different way and you put it on subways everywhere. Or something.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, not so much, you know, feeling like you have to be bound to labels or titles, so to speak. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like, when you write your poetry, do you feel that when you write, that when people read your poetry, that you're showing them yourself in your totality? Like when they read it, like when I read your poem, I'm going to be like, oh, this is Sarah, you know, and it's no one else but Sarah. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I think that's really, I don't think that's important. I think that's like the test.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like, I can't really be Sarah when I write, but if, you know, like maybe younger poets might, or new to poetry people might try to imitate, you know, they might try to imitate something they heard in English class and write like Wordsworth or someone who's wonderful. But that's not them. So I think the true thing in most every art is to let who you are shine through.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm a firm believer in transparency. You know, people are more receptive to the genuine you. You know, when you're just being yourself and letting that flow through your writing. Find that to be very, very important, because I think you connect to people better when you're just being yourself in your purest form.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Now,
don't know. Yeah.
When you write, like when you first started sharing your poetry with people, like what was their initial reaction to your work?
Well, I'm so glad I wasn't in New York when I first started. So, as I said, I had lived near a poetry only bookstore, Open Books. And for some reason, I was already sort of in the writing community. So John Marshall, who was the co-owner of that bookstore, for some reason, he hardly will talk to me now, but he was really interested in my work. And he would give me some poets to read who he thought were similar, you know, because I have sort of a little dancey. So that was really nice. I forgot what your question was.
Like when you first started sharing your poetry, like when you finished writing your poetry and started sharing it with other people, like what was their initial reaction when they started reading your work? Like what were their thoughts?
In Seattle, it was good. In New York, it was very negative. It was pretty negative. And
do you know why the response was negative?
Well, I don't know. I do know I can think of a really fine queer poet who said your style has changed. He's known me for years, and he said, because I did really write like I was a transcendentalist, like I almost was not, because that's who I was, and I have become more concrete. And so he made that comment, although he didn't intend it as a. I don't know what the F. I don't even want to get into it. Right. I don't even. And there are people who've always liked my poetry too. There are people who've always. One of my early poems was grabbed up.
So you would say it's like like half and half. Some had a positive response and some had a negative response to your work.
Yeah, and you know, the negative work wasn't, it wasn't really negative like boo or you suck or whatever like that. It was just more like not quite the same affection I'd see other people get. But you know, also I came into like a herd here. It's like a community, and it takes forever. You have to be young and beautiful to break into a community. So
All right. Now everybody has their own like goal or purpose or intention, for their writing. Do you have any particular goals for your writing? Like what would you hope to accomplish with your work?
Well, kind of what we were talking about, clarity. And I would like to be really descriptive of this whole, of the kind of dual nature, the whole thing of having a body, which is like a big thing to have, I mean, there's a lot that comes with this. And partaking in something beyond the body, so it's like, I think that might be, I forget the term, it might be like one of the basic things of philosophy, but how to have the two, and also just how to love people and forget.
Right.
But yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that provides the perfect segue to the next portion of this podcast. Because now, Sarah, it is time for you to take the mic.
Ah!
So at this time, Sarah, you're welcome to share up to 5 poems of your choosing. You don't have to do 5 poems, but I'm giving you space to do 5 poems, so our audience can have an idea of what your poetry style is like and to hear, what you have to share through your poetry. So at this time, the floor is yours.
Oh, okay, thank you. So first I'll start with a poem that's just, it's kind of fun, and certainly some of you have heard it, and definitely related to lockdown. It's something that when I was, so this is simply descriptive. In my brain tonight, all the kids, and this is also descriptive, but it's also about my sense that there's a party over there and I ain't never going. Okay, in my brain tonight, all the kids are partying in my brain tonight. Mom, everyone's having fun in my brain tonight. Me too, I'm getting loaded in my brain tonight, all relaxed and marinating in my brain tonight, not attached to a promise of my brain tonight. No pleasure prissies in my brain tonight. Hella mamas, hella tunes in my brain tonight. Geneva Convention conventioneers, wild conventioneering in my brain tonight. And sure, tomorrow creeps in, but nothing's petty tonight. There's that. And I didn't really, okay. So this is all saved from another reading. Oh, thank you, Noel. Let me just, I'm so sorry that I'm doing this. This is completely unprofessional collection. Okay.
No, you're totally fine. It's okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. It's getting just random. So this was in a Stonewall anthology, The Pink Yonder. Some of us pining to meet state-of-the-art girls, almighty love, ever expansive dewdrop rainbow. Other hippie chick handles, mint condition girls, playing their hand, shuffling a deck, hid up their sleeve of many cards. Girls loose with freedoms, the ones in the gift bags yielded to us when we were sprung from our jail cell. You know the one. Did Judy know I was queer? And another from that same anthology, and also from the Stonewall anthology. I had a dear, dear friend in San Francisco who I would live with. His name is Alois. Alois talked up fastidious habits he observed while engaged in love's excitations. Bus drivers on hate were clued in, shop clerks, everyone in a radius knew his pride of ownership. I wish Mom talked sex as much as he did. I know lots about travels of the spirit. I'm sort of mental, This is it. May I take off my clothes? That's a prayer. May I take off my clothes, roll about, and know the cloud of unknowing. Sweetie, it wants to be known, don't you think? Okay, it's the prose poem, How Brilliant Beethoven. If my father believed he needed to arm himself against the insanely damaged, carrying rapid fire to end everyday school kids with still squishy bodies perfecting daffy walks, or teens with their dreams of endless horizons after high school, some part of them knowing life doesn't give up on its challenge, but that youth is a superpower? Well, if my father owned a gun, he'd have fumbled opening the safe, shouted at my mom and sisters to be careful as he lifted a lockbox from the safe, trembled working the lockbox, and shaken, realizing nothing left to open but a box of bullets, and opening that would call the question. He'd have howled there was no lockbox in the lockbox in the safe. Not that we ever owned a safe or lockbox to lock in it. Insisted we were moving back to New York. My mother, who was Christian, would have taken gun and bullets from his twitching hand to load the pistol. She gave birth 4 times and also could drown mice in the toilet or a pail of water. She would not have shot anyone, would have denied the weapon existed, then read Bible and attendant texts, while my father, calmed by a shot of whiskey, demanded to know if I had read Robert Louis Stevenson yet, and if me and my 3 sisters, each far older than I will ever be, had a clue how brilliant Beethoven was. Sort of family. Thank you, Alexis. I'm glad you showed up. Okay, so I'll read 2 more. Oh, they're still doing it. There are pigeons who like party. I feel like calling the cops. They party on my air conditioner. So and they wake me up in the morning. So this is about them. I'm just trying to scroll up. Pigeons are having unprotected sex on top of my air conditioner, upsetting most of my flock who know I run a moral air conditioner at top speed. There's no talking to a pigeon, only arm flappage in the stiff wind. I live by example which I set, not in concrete with a palm I set, nor in jello, though I swoon at shimmerings, vulnerability of women. I ask pigeons protect themselves from the consequential and inconsequential. I ask women. And, oh, okay, I'll read this. It's fairly recently out there again. So this will be the last one I'll read. And this is my family, my mother definitely, and more. I wish I'd put some bourbon in my water. After my mother, shock white. After my mother died from Jesus, I left my hair color alone. If it's just fucking you want, or all you can handle, a decent cut will do. We laughed, me and her, when she stopped. It was the same faded blonde she'd been covering. Once I quit, my hair prospered gray and white, and where you rub my nape, auburn, like my locks when California sun baked them red. When I was waiting to be something or someone, and still didn't realize the woman who was my mother read only that bit of her job description on good shoes and teaching her 4 daughters how to assemble do-it-yourself installations of shame. In the year of COVID fear, all the hairs on my head turned shock white, all white, only white. Back when mom was killing herself in the name of Jesus, my next oldest sister jumped shock white. She did that over and over pleading thing too. Stop, stop, stop. No changing mom is what I knew. Though one time I floated my theory on limitations of Jesus, who I like outside of church, mom kept dying. Volition and a misreading of human possibility. Are the careless and evil winning? Done.
Wow, wow, wow. I don't know about anyone else, but Sarah, I thoroughly enjoy your poetry. That was awesome work, awesome work. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Sarah. Sarah, I thank you. I really enjoy your poetry. Thank you so much for coming through to share. I enjoyed your work. Now at this time, I want to take a few minutes before we close. I'm just going to share my screen again. Now for this portion of the podcast, it's now time for our audience Q&A session. Now at this time, if anyone in the audience tonight has a question or comment for Sarah, feel free to unmute yourself and give your question or comment. Well, I see Mindy commented, a great reading, Sarah. Yes, I agree, Mindy. Excellent reading. Anyone have a question or comment they would like to share?
Come on.
Yeah, okay. I really enjoyed hearing you talk and answer questions, and also in the light of everything that you were saying, then hearing you read your poems, although some of them I've already heard or seen or read in other situations, it gave me more enjoyment of them, and it was a big benefit, I think, for me to to connect to words are like, the words are kind of hard and they float around, and they're kind of flat and whatever, but then with a person, it's deeper and it's softer, and I enjoyed this very much. And I always loved your poetry, Sarah. always. And I'm sure most other people did as well. I don't know what your earlier experience was with, I don't know with whom or whatever, but
It doesn't matter.
whatever. But you're very, very cool, and I'm delighted that I got the right thing to hook onto so that I could join you guys here.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Mindy. Thank you
Sure.
for joining us tonight. Awesome.
No, thank you. Thank
No,
you.
thank you very much.
Yeah,
Anyone else in the audience like to share a question or comment?
well, it's just, the "We love Sarah" comment.
Mhm.
Sarah, you're fantastic.
Mhm.
You're really great, and it's an honor to know you, and I really enjoy your poetry, and I really enjoy you. I love your short stories too. And there was something else I was going to say. Oh yeah, I ran into the Pigeon Poem this morning when I was, looking on your website to try to find, this thing, and there was the Pigeon Poem, and so here it was. I got it twice in one day, which was very great. I love the way you see things slant. You have this. It's like slant. It's like it's not the way people are supposed to see it, and it's not pretentious. It's just like slant. It's just wonderful. It's just it's Sarah, and it's really cool, and no one else does it, and so I just really appreciate you. So I wanted to say that.
Thanks, Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
in New
Thank you,
York.
Judy.
She's a New Yorker in Kansas.
And I'm not,
Oh.
I'm not the Judy from the poem, right? I'm not the Judy from the poem that you read.
No.
Thank you, Judy.
Oh,
Anyone
no.
else? Anyone else like to share a question or a comment?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I
Hey,
have to say,
Roxanne.
I'm excited to listen to Sarah read her work. To listen, I haven't heard Sarah read a bunch of poems I did last summer in Brooklyn, but it was really nice to listen to them today without really any distraction on the Zoom. And I love the mirth and the joy and the juxtaposition and, the jello and all the other things that magically appear in the poem. And just your honesty. I think your bravery and your honesty and your openness with whatever is popping through your head, willingness to just put it down on, just to put it down on paper and share it with us. That to me is amazing. The lack of caution, or at least the apparent lack of caution, is much appreciated. Bravo. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
Greetings, Sarah. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Roxanne. And I have to agree with everyone's comments. I mean, Sarah, your poetry has a certain vibrancy and an energy to it that just draws you in from the time you start reading your poem until you get to the very end. It's like you have your own way of telling stories that just captivates the audience and the reader. So I applaud you. I enjoy your work, and I just encourage you to keep writing your story. Keep writing how whatever your experiences are that resonate with you, just keep that same energy and vibrancy. I thoroughly enjoyed your work. Thank you so much for coming through.
God, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, and everyone.
Awesome. Before we close, are you participating in any events, or do you have anything coming up down the road that you would like to announce to the audience?
I'll be reading sometime in summer, and where is that? Other people are reading there. In the Gowanus, I'll be reading in the Gowanus Canal. No, near the, but I don't know the exact date. I could look. It'll be on Facebook, and I'll post it. And if there'll be other people. I'll be reading with other people because I can't remember their names. Anyway, you guys will know. Except for Judy, you'll have to just come to New York.
That's okay. Where can you be found on social media so we can look out for your event postings?
Well, Facebook. I have a Twitter account, which I believe is at Sarah Sarai. And I have a blog, which I don't do much, but it's called My 3,000 Loving Arms. This is bad. I can't even publicize myself. But, I sort of feel like I'm around. Like if you plug in my name, you'll find me on Twitter, or I'm on Instagram. I never use it, but I'm thinking of going back to it. So I just didn't want to see all those photos of people's dinner. Really, it was just such a turn off. I don't mind seeing your cats, but your dinner,
Yeah, a lot of stuff on Instagram is quite overdone, unfortunately. But I'm sure our audience will be glad to connect with you on your social media. You're an awesome poet. I enjoy your poetry, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Now, before we close, there's just one more thing I like to do, as I do with all my other guests, because I need to take this time out to appropriately say thank you. First and foremost, thank you, Sarah, for being a guest on my show, for sharing your awesome poetry. I'm sure everyone else in the audience tonight shares my sentiments. Your work is excellent, and I encourage you to keep writing. Thank you so much for sharing. For those of you that would like to connect with Poets with Purpose and the P.W.P sessions, you can find me on Facebook through the Facebook group Poets with Purpose, on Twitter at @PoetsWPurpose, on YouTube with the same name, Poets with Purpose, And I've recently joined Clubhouse @ The Anointed Pen. Stay tuned for the next episode. Episode 29 will feature poet Terry Rose Jertson, and that episode will be taking place this Friday, April 8th, 2022 at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, for more information about my podcast or my workshop, you can reach me at 646-372-6230 or email me at poetswithpurpose@gmail.com. Now, all my flyers and logos were designed by the awesome team at Eclipse Graphics. You can find them on Instagram @ Eclipse Graphics NY to see samples of their work and reach out to them if you want them to do work for your own projects. And lastly, if you're interested in making a donation, you can do so through PayPal, Tap Media Man, Cash App, $Anointed Pen, or through Zelly, utilizing my phone number. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap on episode 28. This episode will be uploaded to the YouTube channel and posted to my social media within the next hour or so for everyone to have access to and share amongst your own social media channels. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you, Sarah, for being my guest. You all have a good night and enjoy the rest of your week. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.